You heard the news today, oh boy?
On Politico. Came on Politico today. Major
Here we
news.
go. The show's starting, everybody. It's called Bring It In. From True Hoop, David Thorpe is there, and our guest today, on just delightfully short notice, he made himself available. Seth Partnow. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. My kids are decorating donuts in the background. If you hear
Bring it.
some,
If you want to pivot the camera so we just interview them, I'm totally fine with that. Love donuts. We're good with that. Seth, you are an NBA analyst at The Athletic, and you were the Bucks Director of Basketball Research. Is that right?
That is
My
correct.
handwriting's terrible. I wrote it down really bad. Also, you go by the title Fearless Leader.
I have not. I was someone I think mostly ironically attempted to hang that one on me last night. So
it's a fresh one you're just trying on.
Yeah, I'm trying it on. Doesn't seem like it fits.
Yeah. So you wrote I'm not, but everybody else is watching the Michael Jordan documentary. And you wrote some pretty detailed, particular, modern analysis of Michael Jordan's game. David Thorpe is here. He's been thinking about the same thing. I thought it'd be fun for you two to mind meld about like how Jordan would fit in today's NBA. I'm going to withdraw now. You guys can just talk.
I mean, he would fit very well in today's NBA. I think that was, yeah.
You really
No,
think
I mean, no, but that's really like the first thing that I hadn't watched the highlights from that era in a while or any footage. And the thing that struck me right away is just how much like today's player Michael and Scottie look. And that's the instant takeaway. Everyone else, not so much. Michael and Scottie look like they came out of a time machine from 2020.
I mean, yeah, I'm waiting for something a little bit debatable. Those guys are, well, first of all, as Seth, I don't want to take the story away from Jordan, but that Bulls team had a number of lineups that would play extremely well today. If you gave them, 50 games to get used to how the game is played now, right? They could go. I mean, honestly, Pippen could be a 5. Certainly, Rodman could be a 5. Mm-hmm. Right.
I mean, the first run, I think he'd probably Cliff Livingston would spend a lot of time at the 5 in some of those.
Right.
They
We're 90 seconds in, get our first Cliff Livingston mention. I'm so
so what time is it? Cliff time.
But so on Jordan. All right. So I read your article that you wrote on the 21st, whatever. Before we get into any discussion on how he fits, whatever, quickly kind of summarize your point about his mid-range game and how it would translate today. And I think also you made a really good argument about his shooting ability. I was glad you mentioned his free throw shooting going back, I think, his whole career. And we know that translates. People don't realize, Henry, a lot of times when you're projecting three-point shooters from college, it turns out analytically the free throw percentage translates better or projects better than even their college three-point percentage, which I don't understand that, but maybe talk about that a little bit, Seth.
This is a Charlie Rose style question that David just asked you.
That's like there's 6 of those there. Let me take the last one first. So I mean, the big part of the reason why 3-point percentage from college is hard to translate to the NBA is 3-point percentage is pretty blunt in terms of there's a fairly wide variety in what kind of shots people are taking. Are they taking only open corner threes with their toes to the line and feet completely set? Are they taking, pull up 24-footers in transition? Or, what, and everything in between. So that percentage is a very blunt measure of a player's shooting ability. Whereas free throw percentage is a pretty, a free throw is, by and large, a free throw is a free throw. Some people say, the background in a dome, something. There's recent studies have kind of shown there to be very little evidence of the shooting background effect of a dome. So basically, free throw shooting is free throw shooting. Now there might be some fatigue or something else seeping in there, but by and large, if you want a measure of how good, just from a mechanic standpoint, is free throw shooting is a good place to start. Now with kind of the modern technology we have in the NBA with the tracking data and so on and so forth, you can use, you can look at the open standstill toes to the line threes. And okay, that's a pretty good measure of pure 3-point shooting. But that data doesn't exist for college. It doesn't exist prior to 2013 in the NBA. So back to Coach's point, yeah, free throw shooting is a pretty good predictor. Percentage obviously matters, but also like attempt rate matters, because basketball players, once they reach a high level, confidence is not a lacking thing. So if a guy thinks he can make a shot, he's going to take that shot. So if a guy thinks he's a 3-point shooter and he's allowed to do that, that's reasonably good evidence that's a skill he has also. So those are, you can do very complicated models. You can do.
Does she not agree with you about Jordan?
We've made a tactical error by giving them a donut decorating kit this morning.
Disagree.
Disagree. Well, but Jordan.
So anyway, just to finish the point on that,
Yeah.
you can do very complicated models with like some of the synergy data we have in terms of the number of shots a guy takes from 25 feet, corner threes, transition threes, toes to the line, all and roll that into a model, and it performs just slightly better than a fairly simple model just using like free throw attempt rate, free throw percentage, 3-point attempt rate, and 3-point percentage. So that's that.
But he shot better than 40% from three when they moved the line up. And I'll tell you, in my gym, and I've told this to Henry before, I stopped using 3-point lines in our training, 14 years ago. I don't care. I don't want them looking down. They know what far out is. They play enough games and have enough practices from September until April at least to get comfortable with the line, especially the veterans that have done it so much. We just want them spaced out. And it's the same looking shot from 23 feet to 29 feet. We want them shooting the same. So my attitude is, if Jordan proved he could shoot that from the shorter range and studying his mechanics the way he had, he should have been able to be a better shooter if it was something he valued more, which in today's game he would, I would think.
Yeah, and even so, he shot the 2 years of the shorter line that he shot threes, he shot them very well. The 2 years on the longer line where he actually shot over 200 threes, he shot like 35-2 and 37-6, something like that.
Yeah.
For the 2 years where he decided to make it a part of his game.
Yeah.
So, and combine that with the fact that he was a mid-80s free throw shooter, and the data is sketchy, but a very good mid-range shooter on very difficult attempts. I think we have enough evidence to say that from a mechanics and touch standpoint, he was a great shooter and would be just fine. Would he be Steph Curry? Probably not, but would he be?
Who would he be more like, do you think, overall? I want your thoughts too. Like who would I said to Henry this morning, who would be most like him in terms of impact, not style, impact? Who would he play most like, do you think?
I mean, he would be one of the 5 best players in the game today. I mean, he would
for sure. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. In terms of style, someone threw this one at me that actually I think Kawhi is a reasonably good stylistic. Now Kawhi probably plays at a little bit of a more deliberate pace.
He plays more,
but does a lot. But does a lot of the same, especially as Jordan got older. A lot of the kind of the bump a guy off, get a shoulder into him, fade away kind of shots. So
who do you think, Henry?
I mean, I was saying to you, Giannis. Seth, you're familiar. But not that Giannis has the advantage of being way taller, which to me is a measure of how difficult the game is today. Seth just said something that would be taken as absolute blasphemy on the internet, which is that he'd be top 5 today, right? Like most people are taking the position that he is without question 1,000 meters hovering in the sky above every other player who's ever touched a ball. So putting him somewhere in the top 5 is, I'm with you 100%.
No, I'm saying if you just like dropped him in. If you give him like, again, if the player of that talent is coming up in today's age,
right,
he's the best. He's right there.
Right. No, I'm with you. But there's also a thing which is like, if you dropped him in today's, he'd have to learn a thing or two from other people, which people just can't compute just because, that's how we're wired. But so to me, like my Giannis comment was designed to sort of say like, he would be Giannis without some of Giannis's advantages, right? Giannis is so much longer, or Kawhi's a lot bigger, right? I mean, like this is the thing that I think I can't quite put in my head is like Michael Jordan was vastly more athletic and roughly the same size as most of the people that tried to guard him or he was trying to guard, right?
Right.
Nowadays, there would be people as athletic who were bigger, and we've never seen that before.
I mean, I think he would be an elite athlete in like
No, but Henry's
like,
point is great.
Yeah.
What Henry's saying is, if back in those days there weren't a lot of guys, well, like if Scottie Pippen guarded Michael Jordan all the time, he wouldn't be quite as good. There's a lot more Scottie Pippen-like guy. That's Henry's point. It's a great point. I happen to think I like what Seth said too about dropping him in, but giving him time. I've always said this: you got to give them time to adjust. Not necessarily backwards. The only thing Curry would have to adjust to those days would being punched in the face in the playoffs. I think he'd be just fine getting punched in the face. There's nothing soft about Steph Curry.
I think the biggest thing Curry would have to adjust to is his coach saying, "No, don't do that."
You're right.
Oh, that's true. Right.
You're right.
Yeah, that's true. But
I mean,
I will tell you this: I think he plays most like Harden. He would play most like Harden, the best ISO player that we have. He just would have to get better ball handling. He was a very good ball handler for a shooting guard. He was not a primary ball handler the way Harden is now, but there's no reason to think he wouldn't develop that. But to Henry's point, he would have to develop it. Like, you would have to get better at those kinds of things for sure. And then he's ridiculous. Like, he'd be unguardable. His triple threat game he is also so good in the post. Earlier in his career than people realize, which means you got to make a choice now. You're going to double him, or are you just going to keep letting him score those 2 points? And he was also an amazing free throw creator, right? Like Harden. So those combinations, I'd have him with LeBron, within 50 games. It would be some adjustment. I also think I know how to defend him. How would you go about your coaching against Jordan today, knowing his game is adjusted? How do you go about what's your scheme to slow him down? I think I've got a pretty good idea.
That's a good question. I mean, depends a lot on where he's starting. I think that your point about his ball handling, because there, people made a big deal about, when he in that 91 finals, he and Magic, took turns sort of picking. He and Pippen took turns picking Magic up really early on the floor, and that really wasn't something that was done a lot now. And there's not, there isn't like. There still isn't a lot of full court, like I'm gonna dog you and rip you.
There isn't,
but there's a lot of
the backups to it.
Yeah, but there is like more ball pressure applied today than there was then, and I think that hold
on, say that again, Seth. Please say that again.
There is more ball pressure applied today.
It drives me crazy when people talk about the hand checking.
Yeah.
I watch the games on YouTube. Nobody's guarding anybody.
So
they just keep backing up more and more. No one's until they get near the rim.
So in like a narrow
button in David.
In a narrow band of the court, there was more pressure because of the hand checking. But
within 8 feet of the rim.
Yeah, no, but from or once you actually started driving, but like from the other free throw line to the top of the key, it was.
But even then, they were standing inside the key.
Yep. And so that would it would force him to use energy, bring the ball off the floor, because as you said, he was for the day was an excellent ball handler, but doesn't, you look at like the tennis ball drills and the two hand and all that stuff that Curry is doing, like
everyone's doing it.
Yeah.
They're all doing it.
Yeah. I don't think he had that. Like
he wasn't as good a ball handler.
Yeah, no, you couldn't take the ball
he would
from
get
him.
better.
But you couldn't take the ball from him because you try to reach and you just armbar you and like no. But that doesn't mean he doesn't have to work. And then that kind of, I think, over a game, over a playoff series probably wears you down a little bit. And also, more importantly, it burns shot clock. And this is something, research I've done in the past. Basically, like every second you burn on the shot clock before you get into your offense lowers the offensive rating by a point. So now NBA teams, that there's a fairly narrow range across NBA teams of how fast they get into their offense on average. But like the difference between the fastest and slowest in that is worth everything else being equal is worth 2 to 3 points in offensive rating over a season.
Wait, so it's better
to get into your offense earlier. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not necessarily. This is something that I think San Antonio has always been really good at this. They don't shoot early, but they get into their offense early. So they run more offense. So they run more action. So you have to defend more. So you have more chances to make a mistake.
Right.
So
they don't end up with the ISO in the last 6 seconds. They're still running something, which is Henry said this for a long time. Hero ball is he's not the only one to say hero ball is terrible, but we should be running something when there's 5 seconds on the clock. Henry's always pushed that. Yeah.
Or just basketball is good. Play basketball. Yeah. That's a nice idea.
Right. Play basketball.
Yeah.
I think with regard to shooting it early, Henry and I were there when San Antonio pummeled the Heat. And that's when I thought Pop made a change to first open shot, let her fly. This is the fastest defense we're going to see. They're going to be able to defend our stuff. Late in possessions better than everyone else has because they're just faster 1 to 5. So I've gone back and watched tape. I mean, Danny Green and Kawhi Leonard are chucking it early, and they just happen to make it, and then they just rolled from there. Had Pop not told them, go ahead and do it, they wouldn't have done it. And I think that he would have had a chance to win the series, a good chance, instead of getting destroyed.
It's funny you bring up that Heat team because that Heat team is really, I think, the closest analog to those Bulls title teams that we've seen.
Yeah.
Just in terms of
please tell us more.
I mean, the two, I think at this point, Dwayne Wade might actually be a little like his Dwayne Wade in those early, probably first 2, Heatles seasons, like the couple seasons before that and into those first 2 or 3 Heat seasons, is probably a pretty underrated player in terms of his ability to impact the game both ends of the floor. And so that, having arguably the 2 best wing players in the league, and a super mobile big man who allowed you to play to downsize, okay, that's the Heat. But that's also doesn't that sound a lot like the best versions of the Bulls teams we're talking about?
Yeah.
So I think there's nothing new under the sun, and I think that would have been a very, the flying death machine would have been, was that Matt, was it Henry, was that you or Matt Moore who coined that for
flying death machine?
Sounds like Matt. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but that's that's kind of what a team constructed like those, certainly the second pass through of the Bulls would look like. The first one, they were probably a little more traditional.
Right.
But the second one, when they had Rodman and Kukoc and Brian
really
Williams / Faison Dele.
Yeah.
And
right.
Yeah.
I think, Henry, you could have taken advantage of Jordan's competitiveness in a way that I think a team, when Jordan, Seth kind of alluded to this earlier, and I've written this before, the game was played between 18 feet of the rim on both sides of the court. All right. And even though now, I just wrote a piece on this last week, that teams should press more. In fact, I didn't use your point because we're not trying to write 5,000 word essays here, but one of the advantages of pressing is if you don't attack it right away, now you got to set things up, but you're down to 14 on the clock. The game where the Mavericks lost a 3-point lead to the Raptors, if you look, they kept getting the ball to Brunson's hands. There were 14 on the clock. Instead of just attacking, and you just can't win too often playing that way. But Jordan was an amazing defender, but it was always 18 feet from the rim. So I think in today's game where you're guarding so much more space, right, and you're helping before you can help earlier now. You couldn't help then until the ball crossed that threshold, that free throw line threshold, unless you were guarding the ball. You couldn't go double it. You're obviously often towards much more now when you play defense, right? Off your man towards the ball. That's why I told Henry the other day, someone asked why you don't see guys playing with the ball the way they used to always play. Well, the reason why is there's 2 reasons. 1, guys tend to be closer to you because they can be. 2, you have to be ready at a moment's notice to make a play. Because back then, people just stood on an island and stood there, and then you could just take your time. That's not what you have to be at a moment's notice. You have to be ready to make a pass or make a drive or make a shot, right? Because the game is so different now. So I think you could really wear Jordan down, making him guard good players all the time over much more space, and he won't stop. It's one of the geniuses, our best guys like LeBron and Harden. Come on, they picked their spots. Kobe too picked his spots. I think Jordan was such a competitive guy. He wouldn't have, and you could wear him down over the course of a series. This
was part of the thinking of the Spurs summertime offense in those finals, was that LeBron would try to patch up every hole in the defense.
Yeah.
And he was prone to overheating. So they're just going to make him just spin cycle all night.
Bingo.
And they broke the AC in the arena.
Right. They pulled the plug. Let's just say they pulled the plug.
But or maybe they did.
Red Auerbach smiled somewhere at that one.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But they certainly got LeBron to cramp up, right? They got him to overheat with movement and his big core. And I always think about this. They're telling that, like, I have a dog with a giant chest. And they're like, your dog's prone to overheating because all that blood is kept very far from the surface of the dog, right? I'm like, oh, LeBron's like that. Like LeBron's heart is further from the outside than mine is, right? Because he's got all this chest, right? And legit, like, the physics of this is rock solid. Like, it's actually these barrel-chested people, dogs, whatever, like, cool much worse. And LeBron was just he's a car with no flaws other than if you drive it really fast up a hill, it'll overheat, right? Like,
long enough.
So anyway,
I need Jordan too.
Yeah. So this is what you do with Jordan, just make him try to be like a hero ball defender, basically.
Right. Just constantly chasing, because the game is so different. You can't just guard a place in the way we play today. That'll be the biggest challenge.
We can't just guard a guy also. You don't just guard a guy also. It's
not at all.
That's sort of one of the big challenges in measuring. It's always some of the most prone to misuse data available now that's kind of come out of the tracking is like matchup information, because people want to just take, oh, well, you were guarding this guy and he did that, therefore you held him or allowed him or whatever. And that's not, that doesn't reflect the reality of how NBA defense is played at all.
Correct.
It is not just a mirror image, but because people are so familiar with kind of the box, they figure that the defensive side has to be the mirror of the eye, and really it doesn't look like that at all. And we don't have a good, sorry for getting a little meta here, but we don't really have a good statistical vocabulary for what's going on the other side of the ball, because it's not just the kind of the inverse of what the offensive player did, at least when you're trying to assign like individual credit for who did what defensively.
I've been saying that for a long time, and on Synergy, you can actually watch, and I love Synergy. You can watch the defensive possessions, and you could see, I just was watching with a player of mine last week, and he had like a below average rating in certain situations defensively, and I could tell on Zoom that he was a little taken aback. He's an elite defender, the G League. Yeah. He's a G League guy. I said, oh, just ignore that. Yeah. And then we start watching the tape, and everyone, A+, you get an A+ for all of those. You did exactly what you're supposed to do. They scored, and so you got a negative, but you did your job. Never worry about that.
And also with Synergy, the problem is it's especially defensively on a lot of those, it's a biased sample towards the player's worst, because the way Synergy, like the way the play gets coded, okay, you allow like your isolation possession, you're never going to see the time where a guy tries to ISO on you and you just stone him. Because that's somebody else is defending the actual play there, just as far as they go. So what you're going to end up seeing is, if you're like your spot up defensive plays, you're going to see a lot of closeouts where you get blown by. You're not going to see the good closeouts because the guy doesn't shoot, which are really like you basically have removed your best closeout. Your
best stuff.
Yeah. It's like, if you only look at the ones I do badly, I look like shit.
You know what's funny about watching this, Henry? You can go watch on YouTube. The incredible irony of how dumb these offenses were when we think of we in such grandiose ways we think of these guys. So you had rules where if you played a game in Orlando but decided to stand in Miami, your defender had to go with you to Miami, right, until the ball crossed the threshold. And yet they kept them, even the triangle. As much as I love aspects of the triangle and have taught it, it's three dudes in the paint. Jordan was magnificent scoring against people in the paint. Whenever by mistake he attacked, when everyone was kind of lifted, remember, you can't go to double until he crosses that free throw line. He's already running downhill. You're standing still next to your man. You got to be close to your man, by the way. You couldn't be off and towards. You had to be like arm's length away.
Yep.
it's like a crazy circus. Guys running to the rim as fast as they could. They had no chance to catch them. It's awful. And if they had just spread the floor, like if you airlifted, talk about coaching permission, take a modern coach now and drop them into one of those games with Jordan, they would score 180 points a game. They would have to change the rules immediately.
I mean, you just think of how like the simple stuff, like the blind pig action, right? You just bring the center up to the elbow and backdoor cut. It's like, what is this sorcery? And it just, and like very basic, like Princeton principles.
Jordan scored so much off that, by the way.
Yeah.
So what he's saying is, when you see highlights of Jordan opposite the ball, gunning backdoor, that's exactly what Seth is describing. That's simple. Basically, it's almost like a give and go, except it's not always Jordan making the original give. It entered the triangle from the opposite side. Jordan was on the weak side. He would just cut. Yeah, I mean, people have been running that for 80 years. And he called sorcery. That was really funny.
I was thinking about this. Sorry, go ahead, Seth.
No, and they actually see, like in the early kind of Lakers, you see actually Eddie Jones was really good at this too, for like making that cut kind of off of Shaq, where Shaq would just catch it and just like instant reverse pass, bounce pass behind himself to Eddie Jones cutting the baseline.
I love Eddie Jones.
There's this. We just had a love affair with Phil Jackson the other day on the show because of how he handled Dennis Rodman, and I think David, you're writing a little about this, like for Friday. So but it's hard to separate in our brain. Like, so he's an absolute genius on point A and point B and point C and point D and a bunch of stuff. And frankly, that he also was the coach of that thing you're talking about, Eddie Jones, right? But at the same time, like, I was jogging with my son this morning, and we ran by a Buick. And I was like, man, so a Buick, now they're trying to make compact cars. Now, but it's a car that was designed for a certain time, right? A Buick was a 1960s treat, and it's kind of gone downhill in relevance ever since. Sorry, Buick, we're not sponsored by Buick, but to me, I'm like, okay, so they kind of stuck a mark in the sand at a certain time with a certain model of like the 1963 convertible Buick Skylark or whatever was like a really desirable thing, and they're trying to still appeal to those same people, right? So Phil Jackson's way of managing Michael Jordan was a Buick. Like, it's not relevant anymore, right? This is the same guy who ran the Knicks terribly, right? Like, he just, on this one point, not on how he handled Dennis Rodman emotionally, and not how on, bringing a different mindset to, focusing players with meditation, all these things, totally ahead of his curve. But on this one thing, like with how he's going to move players around the court and which players, like, he was stuck in a different time, right? He just like, today we'd wax him with the philosophy, right?
So leave aside kind of, there's a certain okay boomer aspect to, even it kind of comes up a little bit even when you're talking about, like, when he talks about his first meeting with Rodman, it was like, that the whole his
stand
connection,
up, shake my hand,
there's a don't wear your hat backwards. Come on, man. Especially for a guy who was a hippie, it's just like, really. Counterculture was cool for you, but nobody else, which is
actually that's a great point, Seth. Henry doesn't know. Phil Jackson is saying that when he first met Dennis Rodman didn't stand up to say hello.
Yeah.
And Phil Jackson said, no, you stand up, you shake my hand, you take your hat off, whatever. That's what he's saying. And yet, right. He was the original basketball hippie.
And so this is just the epitome of like, okay, boomer is like, I can, it was cool for me, but you. So the more interesting point is I want to get coaches' take on this, is people kind of lament the triangle. I kind of think the triangle won. Everyone does triangle stuff. They just don't run the actual triangle because the spacing of the traditional kind of the Tex Winner a triangle is the value of real estate on the court changed fairly dramatically, and it was the value of that real estate was the same then. They just hadn't realized it in the 90s. But with the 3-pointer, just that kind of deep elbow area kind of sucks now as far as a place to get the ball. People have realized that. But you can do similar kind of actions, and that sort of, I don't know, I almost think of it like as a, you remember those old screensavers that were like geometric shapes where they'd move, pause for a second, and then move to something else. Like, that's sort of what a well-run triangle looks like. It's like shape forms, shifts over here, over here, over here. And you look at the best offenses now, well, the most movement-based offenses now, you don't have to do that. Obviously, Houston has shown you don't have to have a lot of movement.
Dallas either. But when you have Luka Doncic or James Harden, you can make some exceptions.
Yeah, but like off the top of my head, I can't think of offenses that I found pleasing in this way this year. I mean, Toronto has its up, but anyway, but all of those offenses incorporate a lot of those kind of triangle play off the high post, play off the pinch post, cuts, structured movement kind of pieces. They just don't run the actual triangle because the spots that you want to fill in the triangle are somewhat outmoded. Am I crazy?
Utah's offense this year was very good when they decided not to all compete on who could chuck the ball up the fastest, which unfortunately for them, they did a lot. Bogdanovich was a chucker. Clarkson came off the bench, really chucked it. I was actually surprised at Bogdanovich, not Clarkson. But when they're playing their style, in years past, they were very effective at it. It was a lovely offense to watch. I agree with you on the triangle for the exact reasons you said. But the basic idea of the triangle was always all five guys are part of this offense. It was a true democracy that way, which made everyone accountable defensively. And when they weren't, to your point about just the blind pig play, just a simple pass into the pinch post, it's a very hard thing to guard a talented player like Jordan on the wing. So think of free throw line extended, Henry, or even lifted up to the angle. And the ball is at the opposite elbow area. He can come towards the ball high for a handoff or position for a three, or go back door. You have to guard both. And he's just as dangerous doing either one. So every time you committed high, he'd just go back door. That's a hard play to guard.
Yep.
No matter, even if you know what's coming, which is the whole point of the triangle. Even if you know what's coming, you don't really know because there's so many options. As opposed to Harden's offense, which is much more basic.
Right. Like you think about like the Warriors offense for the last couple of years. Like
Cuisinart. Henry called it the Cuisinart.
Yeah. No, you enter the ball into Draymond at the elbow, and for initially it was Steph and Clay, then it was Steph and KD. They kind of run an exchange. Figure that out. Like they like you overhelp on one, the other goes back door. Or flares to the corner, or it's or you fake a dribble handoff and Draymond's like smart enough to feel you move and he spins out and goes to the basket. It is creating more options for the offense than the defense has players.
Right.
I feel like when you described the screensaver, I'm like, oh, this is where like I can tell Seth has thought about this very deeply for a long time, and he's seen a screensaver in the meantime and made this image, and it was super helpful to me. But so that is the one, right? They don't have it this year, obviously, because they don't have all those players this year. But like, to me, the Warriors offense is the one that's the screensaver. But as to vis-a-vis did the triangle win or not, like I totally hear you on this like conceptual level, but on a very practical level, Steve Kerr made a very difficult decision in declining to play for Phil Jackson, right? And in New York, where Phil basically wrote out his relevancy by insisting on the orthodoxy of the triangle with who came in the system, right? Whereas Kerr was like, we're gonna not be orthodox about this. We're gonna be triangle-esque, and then created a dynasty, right? So to me, I don't know if that's a win for Phil or not, right? Like triangle-ish is a win, but triangle.
Well, no. This is. I'm separating the concepts of the triangle from the sort of the fundamentalism that he became. And that's. I think those are very different, because this is where in a lot of ways you get yourself in trouble by like, okay, these are kind of, these things become sort of ground truths, but they're based on kind of assumptions about what is valuable in the game. And those things can change, whether it's by the skill sets of players, whether it's by kind of the overall strategic environment of the league, whether it's rules. I mean, coach just talked about like the illegal defense and illegal offense rules. That remember we used to have illegal offense. You couldn't have 3 players above the free throw line on the opposite side of the floor for just that reason, because it's basically that would mean okay, 6 guys are standing over there and we're going to play 2 men over here, and it becomes more like a game of cutthroat or something.
Which is fun.
Yeah, but I'm not sure people are are paying to see that at quite the same rate. So, but I think that as again, the values of areas on the court have changed because of the 3-pointer, and so the kinds that you can use the same kind of principles, but the same exact actions don't work, because you look at the teams in like this era who've run the most pure triangle, and they were like among the highest every time in their wing players shooting catch and shoot 2s. And if you think about that, if you catch and shoot shot, you've done something good enough has happened in your offense where a guy catches the ball open enough to shoot. So this is we've won the lottery, and instead of winning $1 million, we're running the offense so we win $5,000.
Right.
And so you've limited your so if you want to win, like when things work, you want to win big. And so that, you go to the traditional triangle, and you even see that in some of these highlights. They did, kind of elbow handoff stuff to a guy at 20 feet. It's a wide open jump shot. It would be even better, a wide open 23-foot jump shot, because it's worth a whole more point.
If you guys watch film with me and Henry one day, if you ever want to, when I Zoom one of my players, you'll laugh because I have to make it fun. It's a pandemic. No one wants to get screamed at right now, but I sometimes just have no words when one of my elite 3-point shooters, no matter what league he's in, catches the ball at 22 feet in a set play they're running, and doesn't step with his pivot foot on the catch behind the line, so that if they decide to lay off, they can just shoot it. So he's trying to run his offense from 22 feet, and it gets me so frustrated. I'll just look at it on the screen, and they'll say, "What do you want to say?" And I've said, "Oh, there's nothing I can say. I'm just gonna get angry. So I'm just gonna calm down here. Basically, what the fuck are you doing? Why would you choose to run your offense there unless your coach specifically told you catch it at that exact spot, which for reasons I don't know why he would, and he's gonna get fired soon. Please step behind the line." Or if you want to catch it 15 feet, that's fine. Because you can do a lot of things from 15 feet, but not at 22 feet.
Right. No, if you come off like a pin down and you curl to the free throw line,
that's fine.
Like, and you end up and you that's the read you make, and you catch it there, and it's like, oh, I'm open. It's a free throw. Like, that's fine. Like, that's not what you want every time, but it's like fine. No, it's like,
it's setting you up for something else when you do that too.
Yeah. Like, the next time you come off, like, oh, he shot it last time, and then you up and go and you dunk.
Right.
Which is even better than a 3-pointer. No, but it's like, it's like 3rd and 7 in football, and you're on a 5-yard out. Like, what are you doing? Like, you could catch it, break a tackle, and score and get the first down. But
in theory,
But why not just run it so when you catch it, you've already accomplished what you need to.
I think there's this when Michael Jordan was sort of manhandled into the triangle, right? That was a real coaching task, right? His contemporaries were ISOing, right? Like, so the triangle was vastly better than just holding the ball the entire possession. I watched a lot of Marbury in the Nets era, right? And like, if he'd take 27 shots and he'd make 11 of them, and he'd have some free throws, and we'd basically be like, oh, he had a great game. He's carrying the Nets. But it's like, no, he's ruining the Nets is what he's doing, right? So Michael Jordan, like, Phil Jackson got him to not do that. And the tool he used was called the triangle. So, and then they won titles. Everyone's like, oh, the triangle is a magical vehicle you ride to championships. And I feel like, no. It was an improvement over total unimaginative crap, right? Like 3 stars out of 10, way better than 0 stars out of 10. But like Steve Kerr, this kind of more humble guy, like departed Phil and made, like, with a shrug and kind of a smile, like something that was way more effective than triangle, right? Like,
yeah, it was triangle-esque. I like how you put it. I'd love to talk about this with the Warriors, Seth. I've told this to Henry and I talked about this. I don't know if I've ever written about it, Troop or not, but they were playing the Cavaliers in one of their series in the finals, And in 2 different games, late game situations, in very close games, they got a wide open dunk for Draymond Green. And all he did, this is a Kerr thing, is Kerr taught a term called a pin in. Everyone knew in my world anyway, pin down is when you're like on the baseline and someone comes down to screen for you. They're pinning your defender down. You can curl, pop the 3, whatever. But what he did is he would pin you in because he had guys like Curry and Clay. So Steph would be in the paint area, but not on the block necessarily. Green would be behind 3, and he would pin his guy in, meaning he'd screen Curry's defensive player. Curry would pop out for 3. Now the defense had to make a choice. Do we freak out, which the answer is yes, they freaked out, and make sure Curry doesn't get the 3, or do we just try to play it square? Either guy might be open. When they freaked out, twice late game situations, Green got a wide open dunk in the 4th quarter of the NBA Finals. I'm sorry, if you want to evaluate an offense, and the answer is we can get wide open dunks in the 4th quarter against LeBron James, you win. Like no one, you can't. The triangle doesn't get that. So in the 4th quarter of big games, and they got that. That's a credit to what Kerr did.
So does this ring any bells for you? The play that the coach is describing.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Because so last time Henry and I saw each other was we did kind of a guerrilla podcast at Sloan Conference in the before time, and we were and this
it was at the end of the before.
Yeah, at the end of the before, and we were, and it was funny because we were on with Amin El Hassan and he was like, my favorite play from 2015, and it was like, okay, what was your favorite play from? But he was describing like this exact action where it's like at a baseline, not this exact, but a very similar thing. It's like a baseline out of bounds. Like Steph comes off, they freak out because Steph is gonna shoot a 3. 3 guys go to him. Draymond takes 1 step to the basket and dunks. Game over. And like you say, it's because the system puts the defense in situations where they have to make these sort of untenable decisions. And that gets back, I think that gets back to the earlier thing I was talking about why getting into your offense early is good, is you are putting the defense to more decisions. The more stuff you run, the more chance you have to really simplify, the more chance you have for someone to fall down. Mm-hmm. And if someone falls down, you get a dunk. And, if all you do is stand at the top of the key and dribble, that never happens.
Right.
It's like keeping the rally going in tennis, right? Like at some point,
right,
they might never turn well.
Yeah, but this is, to switch sports again. I used to play competitive ultimate frisbee, and someone I played with and who coached and was a very successful coach used to describe, okay, if you're playing like a zone defense, basically you're just conceding passes that aren't going anywhere. So each of those is a 99% completion, but you make them do a lot, it becomes 0.99 to the n. And as n increases, like if you, not to get mathy, but if you take that 1% chance and it increases exponentially over time, doesn't take very long till the chances of an incompletion get very high. And it's the same sort of concept. If an NBA defense is going to guard 95% of actions correctly, you throw 10 actions at them in a play, like the chances that they've guarded all of them correctly become pretty small pretty quick.
Right. Henry knows my famous quote from Hubie Brown. I don't know if I've written it recently, but he wrote once that you set screens for one reason, Seth, to make defenders think. I think it's the single smartest basketball nugget I've ever heard in my life. And that's what you're describing. So the more screens you set, the more they're thinking, and the more they have a chance to mess up. That's one reason why in the postseason defenses improve. It's because they can really lay out all of your game plan offensively, how we defend everything defensively, and they have film and game experience, game after game after game, to get their process right. Yep. So they make decisions better and better more often, as opposed to when you first see them play in the regular season and you're not as prepared.
And I think that also
defenders think.
I think that also is probably why it over a series it increased, because you can go through that, but then you still have to have the recognition at game speed. Oh, right. the pin in is coming. Right. So my first step is here, my second step is here. Then I make this decision.
And I'm the one that goes, and you're supposed to stay.
Yep.
Oh, you're supposed to go, and I'm supposed. Yep. And you talk. If you watch NBA games, and I wish if the NBA wants to have a more interesting product, we would mic them a lot more and capture that.
Thank you.
Capture that. They're not talking about the girl in the fourth row or what they're eating after the game. But almost always, especially in the postseason, they're walking through. Hey, no, I'm staying home on this. Because the first thing I say to players after a game typically is, what were you supposed to do in that one possession where the coach called timeout and you went to so-and-so? Who screwed up? What was the read for that? Because you're going to see that again next week, whatever. And they're talking through that all the time.
They would have to have you. They'd have to have you two explaining it, though, because most of us wouldn't figure it out.
But what if you explain it, you would understand. It's not rocket science. Yeah. I mean, not often.
Anyway. This is. I get asked a fair amount, like, what's the one kind of piece of data that I would most like to be able to have, and it's like that. But I would like to be able to like have like the court mic for gas. I want to hear what the center. We've talked about this. I think I want to hear what the center on defense is saying, because I think that is the thing that's the reason why why are guys who maybe aren't like the over the top athletes like Marc Gasol, why is he an A+ defender? Or
Gasol and KG is who I thought of right away. They are nonstop middle linebackers.
Yeah, and I think my guess is Tim Duncan would this as well. And he had, he was also, the master of course, sort of not committing to non-threats.
He played angles better than anyone I've ever seen in my life. That's why I think
if you watch Spurs game, watch how rarely Tim Duncan jumps on defense.
Yeah, exactly right.
And there's a weird mystery though, which is most of the NBA games that have happened in my lifetime, there's somebody with a shotgun microphone sitting courtside with this like little satellite dish thing aiming it. This audio totally exists.
Yeah.
And as did, by the way, all of the footage for this Jordan documentary for decades. As does, I can't tell you how many times I've been at some giant moment of the finals or this or that, and all the media's out here, and then out comes whoever it's going to be, Phil Jackson and Kobe Bryant and a freaking NBA crew. They were in there. I'm like, where is all of this footage going? And I know the answer. I've been there. I've been to Secaucus. There's like a giant warehouse, and there's a little robot that scrolls up and down and pulls out the digital tapes. And why are they recording all of this?
It's like something out of Westworld.
Yeah, what is the point of it? They're flying crews all over the league with giant, high-value cameras, quality audio for what? Why are they saving? Why are they saving they have the Rudy Gobert talking on D audio, which is being saved for what? I don't get it.
Let's get Gerard in here, Henry.
Yeah, let's get Gerard in here. Seth, we have a religion on this show, which is, we do have a real legit question. Who's the Phil Jackson of today? This has been bandied about. We have some Nick Nurse votes. We have some Steve Kerr votes.
Spoelstra, Kerr. I said, the top coaches are all similar. Spo's really good, Seth.
Yeah, no, that's a question that the answer says as much about you as about the answer, because it's actually kind of an ink blot test for when I say Phil Jackson. What do you think I mean? Because
the guy who was most like him, the guy who was most like him actually was eerie to listen to his post-game press conference in person was Kurt Rambis. He sounded just like him and dressed like he did. He just couldn't coach at all like him. Not at all, I didn't think. But he played the part. It was like Kobe trying to play like Jordan. He did a better job playing like Jordan than Kurt did coaching like Phil. But I think Kurt's a lot like him. I think Kurt just might be maybe more, I don't know, maybe more authentic. I think Phil, like you said, he was this counterculture guy, but they didn't always coach that way. Kurt seems to be the real deal to me. So does Nick Nurse.
If I may, I kind of think that he wouldn't be the first person to get a little high on his own supply.
Yeah, we talked about this yesterday, Henry and I. He's successful.
Yeah,
it's hard not to have it affect you.
Yeah, so I think there's it's the Seinfeld thing. I'm Keith Hernandez, kind of. It's like, well, I did it, so of course it's good.
Right.
So I think that if there's one trait Kerr has always kind of shown, it's not taking himself that seriously. Like going back to, he's interesting because his career has been well documented since his senior year in college. I mean, he was a major character
in Arizona,
in a Season Inside, which is Season Inside was the kind of the multi-team one. John Feinstein. It was a really interesting book with a lot of people who are still relevant today kind of show up as major characters in that. So, but he's had that sort of that balance between taking the game seriously, but not too seriously,
right.
not himself too seriously for 30 some years now.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's I think that is something that sort of happens in this business, that it becomes kind of serious business, and kind of and it seems like so to me, like, part of what almost the visceral negative reaction to Phil is the end where that sort of characterized him, and I have a hard time seeing that happening to Kerr, where it's maybe a little easier to see like Spoelstra or Nick Nurse kind of ending up there, in 20 years.
What do you got, Gerard?
Look what he named the book, for crying out loud. Like, this whole book is about how Phil was innovative and being humble. He literally goes on and on, page after page, about how other coaches are too egotistical, and then he freaking puts this on the cover. What the hell?
America.
Seth, when you're looking through the data, what are you seeing the later we advance into the playoffs, particularly in the finals, as it relates to what works offensively and what defenses are able to catch on to? I know that we talked about, obviously, defenses just get better because of the repetition in the playoffs, and you have more film and you have more days off in between, and the energy factor and all that. Why do certain sort of like offensive plays seeming to work well in the regular season and even early in the playoffs, but in the most highest leverage scenarios late in the fourth, in Game 7 or Game 6 or a decider? Is that nerves? Is that like what are the things that like make those plays less likely to happen? Like, I'm asking that because it seems like there's a reason why you have these guys, right? Like, you win titles because you have Kawhi, LeBron, Kevin Durant, like these guys who, well, this stuff is all screwed up, whatever, get me a bucket.
So there's a couple different things. First of all, it's, as you kind of reach the tip of the pyramid, there is still like having the best guy matters. And this is who's a pretty good player now, who's like, all right, say your best player is Paul George. Most nights in the regular season, you have the best player on the floor. Now, go to playoff teams. It's just those 16 teams. How often do you have the best player on the floor? Now, go to the second round of the playoffs. How often do you have the best player on the floor? And conference finals. It's just you're shooting at a kind of a smaller. So that's part of it. Part of it is I think that something I've looked at is I don't like. It's a mixture of defense being better and officiating being different. You can build a model that looks at like with kind of some of the tracking data, you can look at like, okay, not just how likely is this shot to be made, but how likely is this shot with these characteristics likely to draw a foul. And if you look at that, like that, the ratio of fouls called to that like theoretical model kind of decreases as you go through the playoffs. So I don't know if that's referees swallowing the whistle or players defending more skillfully so they know how to, whether it's high hands back, or beat guys to spots, or just make plays a little bit less advantageous for the offense in such a way that a foul does not occur, and how much is just like, this is the finals, I'm not calling that bullshit. Like, I think it's a mixture of both. So those are and then there's just very clearly a psychological thing going on, just in terms of, it is better to keep running offense. We know this, but teams for whatever reason, like you can see it happen. See teams like, we got to simplify. We got to scale it back. We got to put the ball in our best players' hands and just everyone else watch.
Well, the coaches will often say in the post game, they'll be like, they know what action we're going to run. Like, right. So I'd rather clear out and give it to my best guy. Right. Like,
so I think especially very late in games where the ref is not going to call like an off-ball foul, I think that actually makes sense, because you've run anything with any sort of off-ball. Like if a guy can just like run through the screen, like your timing is messed up, and now that pass, that entry pass isn't there, and now we're screwed. So might as well. All right, I can control who and when the shot goes up if I just. So in like very late game, I think that I tend to be fine with sort of hero ball. But I think it's like when you see teams with like 6 minutes left, all of a sudden like, oh shit, they're the first 10 seconds of the offense is the point guard up at the top of the floor doing this, and then they run action into a pick and roll into, well, go get me a mid-range shot. And I like to some degree that's the defense, but that's also like there's just a psychological thing that happens, and you know, there might be real reasons for it, but it's also just like it's such learned behavior that's what late playoff games look
Henry's
like.
written about this too. It's also the safe play.
Yeah, there's also the like Seth's read it up. Like if Kawhi misses, the coach doesn't get in trouble, but if the role player misses, but I think there's one other thing, John, which really like, Tom Haberstroh has done a fair amount of digging into this, but like, you know, a regular season game is more often than we care to admit is won by randomness, right? So Jake Layman goes 6 for 7 from 3 in the second quarter, and that's why you won, right?
I mean,
but,
that exists in the playoffs too.
Right, but much less when Jake Layman doesn't get in the game, right? So, right, so like to me, like we're supposed to explain playoff games to sophisticated critics when detail where the coach is going to describe how the coach caused the victory.
Right? Yeah, and that is like,
it's just not what happened, right?
Right. But, no, it's like, you know, it's you know, one of the coach was talking about like you screen to make defenders think as being a super, like on the other hand, like, you know, I don't know who came up with this first. The first person I ever heard say it was regularity was Doug Collins. It's a make or miss league. Right. You do everything right.
Here it
you do
comes.
everything right. No, you do everything right, and they throw it in from the you know, they throw one in from the third row. You do everything wrong, and they miss a bunny. Like, you know,
I said that when I was 14, watching Lakers games with Norm Nixon.
Make miss league.
Yeah. And so that's like no, and this is like actually this is you know, it's funny, like in like when I was with the Bucks, there's a couple friends I have around the league with other teams, and we'd be like like, you know, it would be one team would win by a bunch or not, and it would just be like like everyone would be super mad on one side, super happy on the other side, and we'd kind of text back and forth to each other, just MOML, because we just knew like that was like, it wasn't like one team like, okay, we made shots you didn't, see you next time. Like that's kind of like the on some level that's the analytics guy equivalent of like the coach wave, like, you know,
so I love that. To me, this is like, you know, you're making dinner and you put like grapefruit in the spinach salad and suddenly it's delicious. And it's not because you're a genius, it's because you try a bunch of stuff that fails and this one worked, right? So to me, like, but in the finals, coaches aren't willing to, like, they can't look like it's random how they won, right? So it needs to be programmed how they won. So they need to give the ball to fucking Kawhi again, right? Whereas the reality is if you just play like your 11th guy, he might be the reason you win, but just hoping isn't a plan, and so you don't do that, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. You know
I think I know, but like it's funny you chose Kawhi, because I think like if there's one reason why like Nick Nurse has like vaulted immediately into the top tier of coaches is that he really appears to not give a shit if you think what he did was stupid.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna try it. We're gonna try it in the season to see if I like it. Might look dumb. That's fine. That's kind of what the regular season is for. If I like it, we'll try it again in the playoffs, and we'll roll with it. Yeah. You know, if we're going to do what I think gives us the best chance to win, and we might still lose, but it doesn't mean it didn't give us the best chance to win.
Yeah.
I love what Henry just said, though, about that. I mean, he likes to go after coaches all the time, and I tend to defend my turf, but he's totally right. My favorite ever example of that is the last year Philly went to the playoffs before the Embiid process, whatever. Doug Collins was coaching. They won a playoff game against a totally beleaguered and injured Bulls team.
It was when Derrick Rose blew his knee out,
Right. And Doug Collins, and people can go find this. I'm sure it's there somewhere on YouTube now. After the game, Iguodala had a really good fourth quarter. After the game, Doug Collins admitted to us in the press conference. He said, I don't think I've spoken to Iguodala once all year, but I had trust in him that he would make the play in the fourth quarter, whatever. And so I remember I called Henry right away, and I thought, is he not trying to take credit for what Iggy did by saying I didn't speak to him all year, and that's why Iggy played so well in the fourth quarter? Like, what world are we living in where it's good to not talk to your best player all season and admit that publicly? I knew he'd be fired soon after that, which of course he was, but my goodness. At some point.
No, first he got the whole franchise for a year.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, first they made him like the king of everything. Well, anyway,
So
long. Wait, Seth, are there donut updates? What's going on with donuts?
No, they've moved on to it's now ukulele lessons happening.
Oh, my daughter's learning ukulele. That's funny. What is going on with that? Hey, before we go, today my dad turns 80.
Oh, congratulations!
And I want to wish happy birthday to Jay Thorpe. We're doing a big family Zoom call tonight. I wish I could hug him. He lives 6 minutes away. My wife is there this morning delivering cake. No hugs. So he's not going to watch this. He might have watched this discussion if we were talking to a writer, but as an analyst, Seth, you and I could talk for days. My dad would never listen. But I'm going to send him this. So happy birthday, Dad. I love you. I can't wait to hug you soon, buddy, and we'll talk tonight.
Gerard, Seth, David, Jay Thorpe, happy birthday. Judy, thank you, everybody. We'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern time every day.